Hey everybody, it's Stacy with Bridges 527. I am finally catching up on some of the holiday movies that came out. So, The Matrix today. Let's chat about The Matrix. I know some people liked it, some didn't. I've heard, some different things around, and I just want to focus on some of the Christian connections that I saw. And certainly, this is one of those people have been plumbing this this vein for a million years. It seems like ever since they first came out, and there's way more here than I'm going to even attempt to cover. So I'm just going to cover a couple of highlight things that really kind of jumped out at me. But there's plenty more to talk about in a lot of different ways you can see it. But these are just some things that came out to me as I'm trying to encourage people to just go into all of life expecting God to speak, listening for how he wants to show up, because the word of God is living and active, but he also is living and active, right? And he doesn't just speak in his word, he speaks in all the things. So walking with Jesus is really about having an interactive relationship and expecting him to show up and reveal himself to us all throughout, all of our lives and all the things that we see and do, because he's so amazing. He is so able to speak through all the things that we see, whether it's nature, whether it's our culture, whether it's the stories we watch, the music we listen to. It doesn't have to be Christian for God to still show up and communicate truth to us, because all truth is his truth, right? So in the movie, it'd probably be good if I helped summarize some things, but this one was, how do you even summarize some of these things? So I'm going to assume that if you're listening to this, you've probably seen the movie or have some sort of awareness of the concept. So let me just start more with what I saw instead of trying to summarize what was a little bit convoluted. I was having a hard time following some things. I need to see it a couple times, I'm sure. Although I got the general idea pretty good. But anyways, so you have people talking about the moment when their eyes were kind of opened to the Matrix, and suddenly they're realizing the bondage that they're in, and they want freedom. And we have seen in the past movies Neo coming to this freedom, but now we've got some other people talking about what brought them to freedom, and Neo was the chosen one, who in this movie is a bit of a Christ-like figure. Although he has lost his way, got lost himself back in the Matrix, needs his own rescue. I didn't say that right, needs to be rescued himself, his own, in terms of himself, needs to be rescued. So anyways, but I love it because there's a couple people talking about the things that, what awakened them, what started them on their quest. So basically they're sharing their testimonies. And I think there's something really great in here for us. Because one of them says, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible about, I don't have all the names. We're going to talk about principles here. But he talks about the patterns. He was seeing patterns in things, and those patterns led him to discover some things, and basically led him to Neo. So you have people like that, right? They're studying science, they're studying different things, and they see truth and order and things laid out in nature that they're like, there has to be a designer, there has to be something. So they start recognizing patterns, and that draws them to the Lord. But you have this other person who's saying, what was her name? Rabbit. Bugs Bunny, that's what it was. I knew it was a rabbit thing. Bugs, but she says it was, I think it was her that said, but it was the absence of something. She goes, I kept seeing this key shop, but there was no one there, so I started looking. So she noticed the absence of something that should have been there but wasn't. And I have friends like that. A friend of mine who became a Christian because she was heavy in the New Age scene, but when they had tragedy, there was an absence of comfort, and so she was actually looking for that relationship dynamic. She was looking for something that was not there for her when she needed it. So whether it's an absence of peace, or if it was a relational thing, there was no peace and there was no comfort. There was no love to be found when they needed the comfort for their tragedy. And so she started looking and ended up in a church looking for connection. And that's where she found love and true support and the peace that she was needing, and gave her life to the Lord. So so many different things, but I just kind of love that element of like recognizing that we are all drawn to Christ by different things, and kind of recognizing what draws people in their own journeys, and also recognizing that in the people who have not yet come, like what is it they're hungry for, and how do we speak to that? How do we start to recognize this is the thing you're looking for? Is it they don't feel free? Is it they need, so, and I'm jumping to the end of my notes here, but in the end, they make a comment that people either want, like people don't want freedom. He's, being super pessimistic, the agent guy, the enemy. And he's like, look, people don't want their freedom. You're going to see they're just a bunch of sheeple, a bunch of sheep. They just want someone to tell them how to feel, how to think, whatever. They want comfort and security. And so he said, they're not going to fight for freedom. They don't want to fight. They just want security. And I recognize that there's truth in that. However, Jesus is not against security. Like, he's our provider. He's the most secure thing. And so when you recognize, like, there are some people, there are the William Wallaces in the world that are going to fight for freedom, and that is they live and breathe for that, and that just calls to their soul. So speak to them about the freedom that God comes to offer. But then you've also got people who are looking for security. Well, you know what? Jesus is that too. And he knows that we're hardwired for this. So he's like, build your house on the rock, so when those waves come, you're not washed off. So his whole thing is understanding that our sense of security is an illusion, which is really what the Matrix is saying, the illusion that we live in and how false it is. Christianity is actually the freedom that he brings, the truth that he brings is security. It is safety. He is a provider. He is a healer. He is the ultimate safety and security. He is always there. He is always loving. He will never leave us or forsake us. That is security. So if you're around people who are wanting freedom, you can speak to that. But if you're around people who are really like, they are fearful and they need security, Jesus offers that too. So I love that the Matrix wants to present us with this like dichotomy that you either have to choose freedom or security, or a sense of security. But that is, and the enemy is constantly giving us that lie that we have to choose one or the other, instead of recognizing that Jesus brings all of the things that our soul longs for, and they're found so much better in him. So, okay, so people's testimonies. She mentions that, she started looking, and then she found, because she was like, I didn't see what should have been here, so I started looking, and then she started finding the truth. And I was just saying about like Jeremiah 29, we always look at verse 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, for welfare, I can't say it, and not for evil, to give you hope in a future. What we often don't continue to do is read on in that verse. So that verse is amazing, but the next two verses are actually really incredible, and I rarely hear them commented on. But then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me, and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. So that's what I was reminded of when she was talking about, I started looking and I found it. I'm like, right, that is a promise that the Lord gives us. When we seek for him, he promises to be found by us. And I find so much comfort in that, because sometimes I think we're afraid that we're going to look and find that there's nothing there. But he so promises if we will just start seeking, he will show up for us. Okay, moving on. They were like a couple of them, but all saying the moment he looked at me, things changed. And that again, Neo is this Christ figure that when Jesus one of them says he unlocked my mind. Well, Jesus is truth. So when we see him, we are like him when we see him face to face. He came to bring freedom, and I'll talk a little more about that. Actually, I lied. It's Isaiah 61, where he talks about, the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives. He goes on, all these things that Jesus came to bring. But people, they touched his robe and they get healed. They see him and suddenly there's understanding and sight and things that happen. So I think just that idea of like, they saw Neo and suddenly there was an unlocking of the mind. There was revelation. That is who Jesus is for us as well. Okay. Mental health is a very interesting topic in this, and they want to make Neo believe that he is crazy because of the things that he's saying, and they're medicating him and doing all these things to keep him kind of foggy-headed and to keep him compliant. And I'm going to say some things here, and I'm not trying to be this is a topic that is way bigger than my understanding, of course. So, but I have seen some people who have been told that they had mental health issues, but what probably was going on is there is a spiritual sight, a spiritual understanding, a spiritual giftedness that people don't always understand. And it's very, and I've heard testimony after testimony like this, where what was his David, I draw a blank on his last name. He often shares when he speaks that when he was a kid, God told him, "You're going to be a preacher. You're going to wherever you go, their lives are going to be touched and changed." And I mean, like 5 years old, God spoke to him, and he knew, and he went and told his family, and they were like, they told the pastor, and the pastor's like, "God doesn't speak like that today." So they believed he had a mental health problem, medicated him, I mean, years of suicide attempts and all kinds of stuff until God kept showing up and saving his life. And then he began to realize, like, God really did say that to me. And eventually his grandmother and some people, they apologized. They're like, "I'm so sorry. God came and talked to me too. And we're sorry we didn't understand. We didn't believe you. We didn't have a lens for that in our spiritual understanding." And so all of this, like believing he was crazy, started because people didn't understand the spiritual gift that he had, that God had actually spoken to him. So it must be crazy. If we don't believe that God speaks, then when he does, we think we're crazy. And so when Neo would have these encounters with reality, with a higher reality than what he was experiencing, other people around him were telling him he's crazy, and he wasn't sure. So you begin to go, "Well, I have to like control my thoughts. I have to get these things in order because I don't have a grid for this," right? And I'm not saying there's not mental illness. I'm not saying nothing needs medication. Again, this is way beyond my pay grade to understand the levels of it. I've just heard countless testimonies and seen some things myself with people who believed they had mental illness and then realized, like, actually, that's not so much mental illness as it is spiritual understanding of the higher realm. And if we look at the scriptures, like, I'm sorry, how many people, I mean, Joseph was probably told that he was a little crazy by his siblings. So it's like, "Yeah, you're going to rule over us and we're going to, like, whatever, you had visions." Moses saying, burning bush, like that probably would be treated like a mental illness. If somebody said they had an encounter like that, "God's speaking to me, he's telling me this, I'm supposed to go do this." I mean, a lot of this stuff sounds super crazy when we don't have if we don't believe God shows up in this way. And again, I don't know when it's one thing or the other. I just know that it's not always black and white. And certainly this movie raises some good questions about when is it mental illness? When is it just an awareness of something? You're seeing something that other people aren't able to comprehend at this point. So lots of good questions to talk about. Okay, let's see. Just a couple good quotes. "If we don't know what's real, we can't resist. The enemy is a master liar and manipulator." And so he is constantly gaslighting us and trying to make us distrust any sense of reality. Because if we don't know what's real, we can't fight for it. It's such a true scheme of the enemy. And I love that this movie brings up some of these things because we can go, we see it, how we see how much sense that makes in the movie, but we have to realize how much that's actually happening in our real lives. And certainly The Matrix is making a strong point for us. I mean, I think that's a huge point of the movie, is for people to wake up to the lies and deception they are in. Matt Chandler recently did a series on Revelation that was amazing. Everything he does is usually amazing. So, but he talks in there about the enemy just lulling us to sleep and does not want us to wake up to the battle around us. And it was a really, really powerful thing hearing him talk about that, hearing him talk about Christians in other countries facing persecution and how they look at America and feel sorry for us because all the resources we have, but yet we've been lulled asleep. And we have things so comfortable, we're not awake to the real battle going on around us. And again, this movie so brings that like to the front of our minds. It's such a, like, I would say a prophetic, alarming kind of call. Are we aware of the battle that we're in? And Neo has been lulled back to sleep. And so they're coming back to him saying, you have got to start fighting for your life. And he's like, "I'm not a fighter. I've been, I don't do that anymore. That's not who I am." And he makes Morpheus, I think it was, says, "They taught you well." It's like, you don't even believe that you deserve better anymore. Like, you don't realize that there's more out there. You don't think you deserve more. You've believed this is all you're worth. And you've also believed that it's like a good thing to not be a fighter. Certainly, you can be a fighter in a good way or a bad way, right? Like it depends on what you're fighting for or how you're fighting. There's dirty fighting, there's good fighting, there's all kinds of things. But just because you see someone being abusive doesn't mean you shouldn't stand up and be a good champion of things. It doesn't mean that you should just be passive. There's a correct way to join the battle. So he's really encouraging Neil, like, you have got to start fighting for your life. And it's a good thing for us as well. The question is, how do we do that in a way that honors the Lord? And to that point, I loved this. You've got this woman who is in charge of like the resistance, and they've gotten to a safe place. They're well hidden, and her job has been to protect her people, and she's done that so well that she no longer wants to join in any fights because it could risk people's lives, and she didn't want to see more carnage. And you can understand that, you can sympathize with that, but somebody makes the comment to her that you care more about growing fruit. She was growing delicious tasting fruit for everybody to eat, which was great because I used to eat like slop. But she said, you care more about growing fruit than you do about freeing minds. And that made me think of Isaiah 58, where Isaiah is writing about fasting. And basically, throughout this chapter, the Lord is calling out his people saying, like, you've done all of this great job fasting. Like, you keep the letter of the law, you do all the things right, but you've totally missed the point. And so he's like, you seek me daily and you delight to know my ways, as if you were a nation that did righteousness and did not forsake the judgment of their God. They delight to draw near to God, he says. And they're like, why did we fast and you didn't even see it? Why did we humble ourselves and you haven't even paid attention? So, but he says, on the day of your fast, you seek your own pleasure and you oppress your workers. He goes on and on. He's like, is this the kind of fast that I would choose? Just a day for you to humble yourself and bow your head? And is it just a day for you to eat good food or not eat or whatever, like go through the motions? Or did I not really choose for you to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? And he goes on and on. It's all about bringing freedom. So very much what she was saying here, like, you guys have gotten so good at feeding the saved and developing your fruit and doing all these things that look really good and all your advancements, but you've totally forgotten that the point was to bring freedom to the captives. That's why Jesus came, and that's what we've been empowered to do as well. And so I really loved that. Was a really powerful point, I thought. All right. I think that's mostly it. The last thing I wanted to say, I just thought there's a really cool image. At the end, you have Neo and Trinity going through this battle together. And I just thought it was such a cool kind of picture of marriage. Like, he is in front protecting her from all the bullets that are coming, putting up a shield. So he's kind of drawing the fire and he's taking the hits, but he's protecting both of them from all of the attack. But the whole reason he's doing it is because she gave him a reason to join the battle again. She inspired him. It was the love of her that made him willing to step back into the battle, willing to go take the fire, willing to start freeing other people because he was so motivated by her. So she inspired him, he protected her, and there's this kind of thing where they both have their roles and the way they play together in that relationship that I thought was just a great picture of marriage. And at the end, she's the one lifting him up. So he's protecting her and she's lifting him. And again, I just thought that was a really great visual for, I think, the way marriage, when it's done well, should really look a lot like that. So anyways, that's a lot. It's a long video here, but there's certainly a lot in the movie. So hopefully this is a great jumping off start for you to kind of think and process, and hopefully the Lord will just be speaking his truth to you in a way that helps bring you freedom as well.